Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Streamed and Screened, an entertainment podcast about movies and TV from Lee Enterprises. I'm Terry Lipshetz, managing editor of the National Newsroom at Lee and co-host of the program with Bruce Miller, editor of the Sioux City Journal and longtime entertainment reporter. Bruce, it's the season. The season is here. Award season.
It's award season. Never mind the holidays. I think that's a better holiday to celebrate, right? Because you don't have to buy gifts. And you just get.
The only thing you might be buying are subscriptions to streaming services and other ways to watch if you've missed anything like I have.
You too can be a critic.
That's
all
right.
You need to do is have all the services so you can see everything. You can walk in my shoes for a day or two. I'll tell you, I have been watching movies around the clock. I kid you not. And I've been seeing a lot of things. This week we came out with the Golden Globe nominations. And those were kind of underground for a while. I was like, I don't think we're going to give them any attention this year because they've had some kind of organizational problems. But it's going to be on CBS and Paramount Plus, so I think they have a profile. And even some of the nominees said, well, I don't know how to react to this. So there you are. But it is a great bellwether for the Oscars because they hit just about all of the films that would likely be nominated for something. You'll still see some stray ones, but I think for the most part, the big names are in there.
Well, and going back to some of the episodes we did this past summer, particularly around Barbenheimer, which was, the big moment of the time, we talked about how, Barbie is a movie you have to take seriously. This isn't some kid movie about the doll, and we predicted that Barbie could be a big showing at Oscar season. It led everything here.
And it's dominating the music categories. I think it has 3 nominations in the Golden Globes for Best Song. Now that says something. Did you think it was a musical? I didn't think it was a musical necessarily, but I wouldn't doubt that the Best Song Oscar winner would come from Barbie.
Best Original Song, 6 nominees, 3 of them are from Barbie. I'm not great at math, but 3 out of 6 seems like a pretty good odd to win something.
And I think they're in the Oscars, they're limited to 2 nominees.
Okay.
They used to have it, but I think they've changed the rules now so that 2 out of the 5 could be from one movie.
Even going back to some of the acting aspects and the directorial, we had talked about this could be an opportunity for Ryan Gosling. And sure enough, he's nominated.
He's in there. And Margot Robbie's in there.
Greta Gerwig for Best Director, Best Screenplay. I mean, it's what you kind of expected, which is a movie to be taken seriously.
Oppenheimer. It is interesting to see how it all is going to shift down. I think Killers of the Flower Moon is another big consideration. So those are probably the big 3 that will get attention at the Oscars and all the other ones. Now we'll be seeing a lot of those critics awards. We've already had the New York Film Critics. But I think as you see those kind of spill out, you'll see these same names repeat, and then we'll see where kind of the strongest contenders lie.
Right. I think, and we talked about this with Oppenheimer, because Matt Damon did not get a nomination in this, correct?
For that, and he did for Air.
Right, he did for Air, and I think we talked a little bit about that months ago, but Robert Downey Jr., and I think he predicted that would be the one that would get a nomination for a supporting role in Oppenheimer, and that's exactly what happened.
And without any other competition, that helps. It's when you have 2 from one movie that it goes, I don't know if we can pull this out because you're competing against somebody in your own film. And I think there are a couple of those in the Golden Globe competition.
Was there any big surprises for you in the Golden Globes, either on the movie side or on the TV side?
They all said, they were snubbed. Not necessarily. Some of these people deserve not to get a nomination, but they think they should get a nomination. I think it pretty much is as expected. The interesting thing are the foreign films that got into the Best Picture. Normally, if you get 1 in that category, that's usually enough. But this year, I think we have 2 or 3 of them. So that's an interesting development. And it is more international. There are a lot of first-timers, too. 2 women in the directing category. That's an interesting thing. So who knows where it's going to lead? And award season is such an unpredictable time. You can start award season by saying, absolutely, Robert Downey Jr. is going to win. And then by the time the Oscars are given out, he's not a player, even snubbed in the nomination.
Yeah.
So it ebbs and flows as the time goes.
Yeah, I think what was interesting for me, at least, I wasn't surprised, for instance, like Succession got nominated for a best drama. I mean, I pretty much expected that would get it. And The Crown is usually up there as one to be considered. I guess I shouldn't be too surprised, but to a degree I am, to see The Last of Us nominated in that best drama, because it is science fiction, but it's also something that's based off of a video game. And I think that one, it was so long ago, you almost forget that it premiered in 2023, because it came out, I think, it like the first week in January.
Right.
That was one where I remember seeing the previews for it and thinking, well, it's on HBO. I'll probably give it a chance. It looks kind of interesting. It seems like something I might want to watch. And by the time I got to the end of the series, I'm thinking, wow, this is one of the best things I've seen in a long time. It was kind of, nice, but I think if you asked me 12 months ago, do you think The Last of Us would end up being nominated in the drama, I probably wouldn't believe it.
Well, and there are different years too. The one goes calendar year, one goes season year.
Yeah.
And that kind of throws you off. Like, well, what year was this? Is this part of this year? Was this the year that White Lotus was involved? It's hard to figure it all out. One of the things people have been mentioning is that May December is listed in the musical/comedy. And that's a drama. That shouldn't have been in there, but they probably figured they needed one more to fill that. It didn't quite make the cut for drama, but there is no Color Purple in the musical comedy category for Best Picture. So that says something about that film's chances. It might not be the strong contender that people think.
There's another show that was nominated. It has 3 nominations for a limited or anthology series, and then also a couple in the acting categories, but that's Fargo. And that's a show that just debuted a few weeks ago, and I've been sucked into it. It is so good. You set me up so well on that one where, you told me it's like the best Fargo since at least maybe the first Fargo. It is so good. It is so, so good. I'm angry now because that first week they gave us 2 episodes. I want 2 every single week, and I've got to, I get to the end of it. It's like, I got to wait a week. I have to wait one more. So good.
Well, today I have a little surprise for you because I know you'd like this.
I love surprises.
I was able to talk with David Rysdahl, and he plays Wayne Lyon. That's Juno Temple's husband in the show, who seems like just the nicest dad, the most beleaguered person, and his mother is that evil, mean kind of woman who controls everything in this part of the Midwest. And he's also, if you didn't know, a part of Oppenheimer. So he has kind of double duty here this time. And he talks about both of those jobs. But the more interesting factor of it is that he wasn't really planning to be an actor. He liked acting, but he was geared toward becoming a chemist, which fits in right well with Oppenheimer. And then he has this Midwestern background. He's from Minnesota. How that fits into Fargo. So the stars are aligning for him. And I want you to meet him because he is such a fascinating young actor. He's married to Zazie Beetz, and she was in Atlanta, if you happen to watch that series. They're both so busy now, and he also has a starring role in the next Noah Hawley series, which is Alien, and they'll start filming that after the first of the year. This is one, it's kind of like we're predicting something big is going to happen from this. Hey, bud, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Well, I'm bowled over by your performance. I really am, and I'm not trying to grease you or anything, but you capture the essence of Fargo better than anybody I've seen in 5 seasons of this series. It has to do with the fact that you're from Minnesota. But is there something else that you tapped into?
Well, I definitely tapped into my dad and to my uncles. I think there is that sense of being from a place that's hard to authenticate. So the fact that you feel that way means a lot to me.
Did you ever think that you would be playing somebody that you knew so well?
In so many of your life, you're trying to outrun your parents, and then the reality is that you're going to go play them. I think there's a beautiful irony to it, a universal irony. But when I first got the audition, I told my dad, I'm finally accepting the fact that I am you in a different way. And and he loves it. He's like, oh, Dave, you're playing. He's having the time of his life. He's having the most fun of all of us with it, which is great.
Were you kind of the one everybody would go to? Like, am I doing it right? Am I getting the acts? I bet Juno was constantly asking you about it.
Oh yeah, Rich, Juno, everyone kind of came, and I felt responsibility as a Minnesotan. I'm like, oh, I gotta get these right. So I actually asked friends from all over the state. I'm from New Ulm, which is a more German influence. So it's a little different than the Fargo, right? But my dad's he's Norwegian and Swedish ancestry. He's from the middle of the state. And that's where his accent is like, it's really Fargo-y. And my grandpa had that same, but I wanted to give them a variety. So I had some friends and relatives record just saying how their weekend was. And we got on the Scandia Facebook page and like listened to real people there and just tried to make it as authentic as possible.
Oh yeah, you really went there, didn't you? Yeah.
Oh yeah. And we go home and my dad, he gave a genuine oofda. And I was like, yeah, see, no, people don't even realize. He's like, oofda. And I'm like, we have it on our coffee mugs. And it's always funny when some of my friends, especially in the Minneapolis area, they're like, we don't talk like that.
When the movie came out, were you offended by it?
I wasn't. I thought it was a celebration of Minnesota culture. And like Marge Gunderson is like a really good person. She's like my aunt. She felt like that. Like I have aunts that speak like that, who like the idea of what you owe your neighbor. Our next door neighbor always blows out our whole yard. We give them a tiering. My mom makes these little coffee cakes, brings them over, and he'll always be over here. He's got this big truck that blows out our driveway. My grandpa, he is the volunteer snow removal guy for 40 years in Clarkfield, Minnesota. So I really thought it was, these two filmmakers are talking about this state that they grew up in, the Coens, and I felt like they was celebrating us. Some people I think that it's making fun of it, but I really didn't feel that way. And then being a part of it, it was really important for me that Wayne wasn't a joke, because he's one of the only decent men in this whole season. And I'm like, hey, there have to be some decent men. And I'm from Minnesota. I don't want Minnesotans to come off as like, oh, they're just silly or kind of naive. Like there's something genuine there. So that's my experience with Minnesotan and the Midwest in general.
He's a good father too, that I think is extremely important. It resonates. Well, how did you hear about it? Did you get a call and they just said, you might be good for this, or what?
No, it was an old fashioned audition. It was a self tape. Came through we did two scenes. We did the scene, I just want to play floor hockey in my socks with Scotty scene. And then you want to take a tumble scene. Those are the two scenes that I got to do. And my wife is an actor also. So I got to do them both with her. And then we send them in. They had a few notes. I do it again. And then Noah's like, he wanted to Zoom with me. So I did a Zoom. My wife was on a Black Mirror episode in Spain. So I was over there, jumped on a Zoom with Noah. And then you don't hear back for a couple of weeks. We were in Berlin. She's half German. I get a call at 11 o'clock at night from my agents, because it's like LA time, right? And they're like, you got it. And then we went out dancing until like 3 a.m. It was pretty amazing, but it was a normal casting experience. I think it definitely helped that I just felt like I knew him. Sometimes you as an actor, you're like, oh, is this person inside of me? Like, can I portray him? And I'm like, and Wayne, instantly I was like, oh, I know him. I know this man, and therefore it's going to be really fun to audition for it. I don't know if I'll get it, but I definitely know my way into this character.
It's an easier one to audition for than it would be like Oppenheimer, for God's sakes. Yeah. How does that come about?
Oh yeah, that one was hard because they give you dummy sides. And you have no idea what the script is. They don't want to give it to anybody. It was literally you're a professor of physics lecturing to a group of students, and it's like two monologues full of science jargon. One thing about me is I was a chemistry major at St. Olaf College. I knew some of the science, and it allowed me to be like, all right, I know what this stuff is. It's not just words to me. Like I can make it real, and also I loved my science professors. And so I was channeling them. I channeled my dad in Fargo. And I channeled this fun science professor I had, the organic chemist professor I had at St. Olaf College for the Oppenheimer. But it was a very different experience because there were dummy sides. You had no idea what the relationship was. They want to make sure that you could do the scientific talk without it feeling like you're an actor.
So what was that like, though, being part of such a huge, huge film this year?
It was, we shot at Los Alamos, and I got there and I was at a Holiday Inn and I couldn't sleep the whole night because I was like, and then you get there the first day, and the first person I met, I got into this van to go to set, and it was Cillian Murphy, and he was, and he was like, "Hi there, welcome. I'm Cillian," and it was like this is just like a normal actor, you know. Yeah. And there was, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I know," and I'm like, and then we just chatted on the way to set, and he was so down to earth and inviting, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be a fun experience." Like he's my leader in the scene as Cillian, but he's also a leader as Oppenheimer. So like, I could just, all those feelings I was having of kind of looking up to him, emulating him as an actor, I could just put into the role. And I think we all felt that. All the scientists, he was such a great leader as the lead on the film, and that's exactly what was happening to the scientists. So we could just put everything that was happening in this meta way into the character.
Did you have to do a lot of research on him, though, or did you say that's not going to help?
No, I definitely. I read the book that it was all based on. We all read the book that it's based on. Nolan wanted us all to read that, and we all read that. And then we also, growing up a chemistry major, I knew a lot of that history already, and it was the breakthrough of thought that was happening at that time. Not only we're starting to realize that we can. I mean, philosophy was changing, you know, because at that moment in life and at that turn of the century. And I think we're also there right now with AI, and to have the same conversations now that are mirroring the same conversations we had about this thing that's man-made, that's harnessing intelligence or harnessing the power of the atom. Like it was, and we should be shooting it at the beginning of the Russian invasion. There was a lot of things happening in the world that charged that set. So not only was the research that we were doing in the books, but it was also what was happening in the world. Felt like we were replaying a moment in history that was being recycled in our everyday lives.
And we'll never be the same again.
Yeah.
But then how do we go from being a chemistry major to being an actor? That seems like a leap.
Yeah. You know, no one from where I'm from is an actor, right? The idea of being a professional actor was so far outside of my realm of possibilities that I kept it a secret to myself. I acted all through high school, and I grew up, I was homeschooled actually until 7th grade. So I did a lot with in my homeschool group, whatever. And then I went to college and I was a chemistry major because I loved science. Every elective I could have that was free was an acting course or a writing course. And then I auditioned for the plays, and I got into the plays at St. Olaf. And then my senior year, I could do an apprenticeship at Great River Shakespeare Festival. I got into that. I also got an internship at a lab. And it was a very pivotal moment in my life. I was a senior. It was in April. And I was like, I'm going to try it. I'm going to go do this Great River Shakespeare Festival in Winona. I played Laertes in the apprentice program of Hamlet. And I had the time of my life. You got to be around those professional artists, these actors. And I'm like, this life can be like this. You know, you can do this for a living. And one of them was from New York. Her apartment in Astoria, Queens, she was going to be gone for a tour. And she was like, well, you can come and live for a month with my roommate. And I do a sublet. And I went home and I painted, I told my parents I'm going to move out to New York. I became a huge Dylan fan at that time too. And I was like, Bob Dylan came from Minnesota, went to New York City. Let me just try this out for a year. I painted houses to get $3,000. Got a job at this standard hotel. And I used my chemistry major to tutor kids. I tutored a lot of high school kids and did a lot of like short films. My first 3 years in New York, every year I just fell more in love with it. And it was hard. I was broke the whole time, but I was also getting better and around all these young artists. I lived with 10 people in Bushwick, Brooklyn. You know, we had 3 bathrooms, and it was like one of these crazy places. And one was a musician and a cartoonist. And if nothing else comes from this, I get to have had this amazing experience of living in New York and making little short films every weekend. And I remember thinking, don't try to look ahead too much. Just look at what's happening right now and appreciate what's happening right now. And if it comes, something else comes, it comes. And that really saved me during the dark times when you're like confused about what you're doing and you're feeling kind of lost. You just kind of like ground yourself in your friends and the art that you're making, even if it's at a level that's like a short film. I made like 50 short films in my 20s.
The thing is, though, you come from a place like I do, where they say, well, that's no career. You've got to have something to fall back on. right? And how do you deal with that?
That's exactly. It was hard. The chemistry major, all my friends were now suddenly doctors, and I did a lot of thought like, well, what kind of life do I want to have? And who am I trying to impress? Am I trying to impress my uncle who I love to live his life? As long as I feel like it's the life that I'm living and I'm being good to people, I'm going to be good to myself, I'm paying my rent, then who cares? And that choice, I think, in life, everyone has those moments in life. Sometimes people decide to live somebody else's life. But I remember this great Charles Bukowski poem that is about this guy. He talks about he falls in love with a waitress, and his family kind of poo-poos it, and then he goes and marries like somebody else and is unhappy his whole life, and he's in his like 70s and he's divorced and lonely, and he's like, I should have married, her name was like Marianne or something, and his brother's like, well, why didn't you? And the idea of like nobody really, like, as if like somebody else was living your life or telling you how to live your life. And I think that's a choice you have to make. Is I just kept enjoying it. I was feeling fulfilled by it. Was meeting great people, and my soul kept on being fulfilled. And that's what ended up being the more important thing than what people thought of it.
I am not in a rich profession. Every day is different. Every day is interesting. Every day is fun. And I think it's much more important to have those kind of rewards than to be somebody who's just kind of bitter, disgruntled, and maybe makes a lot of money.
Amen.
Yeah. Now you prove me wrong, and you become very rich and famous, and then you'll have all of it, the best of all worlds.
It's like I've met people now who are rich and famous, and I can tell you, I feel like we were having more fun broke in our 20s than I did all these short films. A lot of these actors are in their 80s, and we're doing films for no money, and he loved it. We were having so much fun, and now I think about being on these big sets. We're doing the exact same thing. It's the same part of the soul it's coming from. You have a little more resources. If you're trying to do this work to become famous, it will eat you alive. But if you're just if you love it, if you love the storytelling aspect of the acting, then it doesn't really matter what level you're doing. You get to work with people who are maybe just have more resources and are really talented. You get to work with Noah Hawley and Christopher Nolan, and it blows your mind. But your happiness is not contingent on that need.
But you still get to work with Noah. You're going to be in his next series.
I know.
Was that you were really good at the Fargo set? Could I get you coffee? Is there anything more I can do? And
you got to ask Noah that. How much? I think he sent me an email after the final day and was like, "Hey, there's something maybe in Alien for you." And I was like, "No, I'm there." And then he called me about a month later and told me about this other guy that you will soon meet.
You haven't started yet, though, right?
No, we start in February.
So how do you and your wife juggle this? Because you're both working, you're both busy. Is it like one for you, one for me, or we'll see you on the weekends, or when we can get together, or what?
A great question. She was already working a lot. Been together for 10 years, and I was doing all these shorts and indies, and suddenly she was gone a lot on bigger projects. And I realized that if we get successful at this, both of us, this is going to be our life. And we had to have a real come to Jesus about that. Are we happy? Are we fulfilled? I mean, it's similar to me the choice to stay in New York and to pursue this thing. It's like you have to ask, you know yourself well enough, like, is this going to fulfill me? Is this going to fulfill you? Like, it's like, that's the question every couple I think has, but we just enjoy when we're apart. And then when we're together, we're really together. We spend a lot of time together when we're together. And that's what a beauty about being an actor. You also have these moments like a month where you're both not working. You get to really invest in each other in those moments and then find romantic ways while you're both away shooting to stay connected. We'll watch movies together over Zoom, that kind of, or have a Zoom date or making sure that we like during the shoot, we'll spend a weekend together and it's nobody else is invited, just like us being, very intentional about our time together. And then also always checking in, like, how are you feeling? You feeling good? All right. Creating those avenues of real communication.
You've got a book in this. You should write this down somewhere because how often you see that people are jealous because they're somehow too busy doing this or whatever. And it's just like, oh, come on, you knew what you're getting into. You know what the demands are. Don't be that way.
I think stories are interesting when the character gets what they want and then what happens. And I think that happens a lot in life. Like we have this idea of what will fulfill us, and then you get it, and then what happens? And I think so. I think for us, it's like, well, we have this life now that we can live. Like, is it fulfilling to us? do we want to keep living it? Or if we don't, then let's get out. Let's go to something else.
What lesson do we learn from Fargo?
For me, Fargo is all a morality tale, like a fable about the good and the not so good of life. And this season is really about the past trauma, the past debts that you can't outrun, right? It's going to catch you, and you're gonna have to deal with that. And as a society, I think we're also asking that, like that we all have debt, we have past trauma as a nation, as a society that is being brought up, and we're gonna have to sit with it and deal with it before we can actually move forward. For Wayne's character, he can't avoid anymore. There's a lot of avoidance at the beginning of the season, and I think he has to sit in it and go through it together with his wife.
Oh, that's great. Was it too cold for you in Canada? I bet not.
No, I was, I was used to that. And what's nice about Calgary, I don't know if you know that, but they have these warm spells that come up the mountain range. But in Minnesota, we didn't have that. It's just cold. It's just, it's like blistering the Great Plains. So we actually had a few in Calgary. It'd be freezing, but then you'd have like a week of warmth coming from the south.
I always say that because we're from the Midwest, we're going to live longer than everybody else because we've been frozen half our lives. And it's like cryogenics, but it's just...
That's a good Minnesota way to look at it.
David, thank you so much. And like I say, and I'm not lying to you, I really warmed to your character in this series. And I love this version because I think it has stuff that we can latch on to. Mm-hmm. I think when they go too far back, it's very difficult to kind of relate to it. But this one is a real test of our strength. But your character, he caught it. He knows exactly what he's doing.
Oh, thank you so much, Bruce. I really appreciate it.
When we see you for Alien, just know I'll be the one.
Oh, good.
Maybe then we'll be in person. We'll see what happens.
Oh, I'd love that. That'd be great.
Hey, thanks so much, and have a great holiday season too.
Oofda. Whoa, oofda.
Right now at Safeway, earn 4 times rewards points when you shop for participating items with Safeway for you. Shop for items like Frigo crumbled blue cheese, Kellogg's Club crackers, Coca-Cola, all liquid detergent, or Utz chips, and earn 4 times rewards points with Safeway for you. Offer expires January 4th. Plus, get select holiday essentials like gift wraps, bags, holiday decor, lights, and more. Buy one, get one 50% off. Restrictions apply. Promotions may vary. Visit Safeway.com or head in store for full offer details.
All right, Bruce, thanks for that interview. Real fascinating, real interesting guy. It's kind of interesting because he's from the Midwest, so he does sound like he's from the Midwest, but he also, he sounds like he's a little bit in character, but he's also out of character too, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, he knows better, and hey, where'd he go? He would talk to his dad. His dad was his guidepost there. But there's your second episode of Fargo this week. I'm sorry I can't do better, but there's your chance to see it. Now, next week, you've got some homework to do before we get to next week, because I want to do the top 10 movies of 2023. So I think you have some that you've got to see. I've seen everything that could possibly be a contender. I have even a couple of independent films that I don't even know if they're on anybody's list. But I want to go through the list of the top 10 movies of 2023. And then the following week, we'll do the top 10 TV shows of 2023. But that's a calendar year. So make sure you look from January to the end of December.
Looking forward to that as we slowly wind down this year.
Hopefully, people who listen will send in their list so we can see what you have to say about your favorite films and TV shows.
Absolutely. You can do that through podcasts at lee.net. Send us your thoughts, and we'll be happy to share them in a future episode. And for that, Bruce, thanks again for this episode, and we will see you again next week with another episode of Streamed and Screened.